Hi there, Alex here at mixinglessons.com. In this video, I want to give you 3 tips on occasions where during the recording process, less is almost always more. 3 things that you can keep in mind when you're recording, which means that generally you will create recordings which are easier to mix and which give you better results at the mixing stage because you haven't overdone certain elements of the recording. So the first area of recording where less is generally more is with regard to the number of parts that you record. Now, with modern day home studio setups, one of the big benefits is that we can spend a lot of time recording. We're not paying a studio on an hourly rate, so we can spend as much time recording as much as we want to. And that is a great thing, but it can maybe lead us to recording more parts than might really benefit us. At the same time, we also have modern day digital recording where the number of tracks that we can record is pretty much limitless. And whilst these are both great things, the combination of the two can sometimes lead you down the wrong path, shall we say, where you think, I can record another part and another part and another part. And we almost have this vision that the more we record, the better this song's going to be. And unfortunately, you will often find that when it comes to the mixing stage, that isn't really the case, because what starts to happen is the more parts you record, the more those parts can start to compete with one another. And trying to mix a track where you have lots of parts that are competing with one another is very difficult. Now, how many parts are too many parts? Well, obviously that's subjective and it depends what kind of music you make and how you like your music to sound. But I think that one really useful question that you can ask yourself when you're recording is, does this part that I'm recording complement the other parts, or does it compete with the other parts? If the answer is yes, this complements the other parts in the mix, the other parts that I've already recorded, then that part probably belongs in your song. If, however, you feel that it competes with the other parts in your song, then either that part doesn't belong in your song, or maybe some of the other parts that you've already recorded don't belong in your song. So in general, while there are no rights and wrongs and there's no particular number that says this is the right amount and this is too many, having more and more parts added to your song can generally be detrimental when it comes to mixing that song. Now you might say, well, part of my writing process is that I record lots of parts because I don't know what I'll want in the final version of the song. That's absolutely fine. I think that's a great way of working, to make the recording part of the writing process and to record parts to try them out. But you have to be willing to listen to what those parts do in relation to the other parts and to let some things go. Just adding more and more doesn't mean that the song is going to get better and better. So whether you decide to let go of some of the parts that you've already recorded because they don't really work with the new parts that you're recording, or you try new parts and you think, no, they don't work with the older parts that I've recorded earlier in the session. Either way, it is often the case that less is more when it comes to the number of parts that you record and that you add to a song. Okay, the next area of recording where less is often more is with regard to the number of microphones that you use to record. Now, obviously, there are instances when you're going to want to use multiple mics. Maybe you want different options for whatever it is that you're recording, and so different mics will give you different options. Or maybe you're using stereo mic techniques or multiple microphone techniques. There are definitely good reasons to use more than one microphone, but there are also instances where this might hold you back a little bit at the mixing stage. So I think a really good way to approach this is to have a reason to use each microphone. So let's say you're recording vocals. You might want to use the 2 condenser mics that you own because you might know that one of those 2 condenser mics is a bit brighter than the other, and you're not sure which of those 2 mics is going to complement the singer's voice the most, and so you want to use both because you want to have those 2 options. You want to be able to listen later on and decide which of those 2 mics captured the sound the best. Or you might want to put up a condenser mic and a ribbon mic because you might think, well, I think I want to use the condenser mic, but there is a chance that I might want that darker, smoother sound that I would get from a ribbon mic. If you've got a reason to add additional microphones, then absolutely do it. If you know what that microphone will offer you and you know why you might want to use that particular characteristic in your song, then there's absolutely no problem with recording with as many microphones as you feel is appropriate. However, if you find yourself putting up lots of microphones and your thought process is, I will record this vocal with 5 microphones, and your reason is, I'm doing that because I own 5 microphones, that's probably not a great reason to use that many microphones. Now, certainly you might say, well, I want to use that many microphones because I own those microphones and I want to get used to how each microphone sounds. I want to learn its characteristics so that I really get to grips with that microphone and know what it can offer me. Well, fair enough, that's a great thing to do. And I would definitely encourage you to really familiarize yourself with how each of your different microphones sound and what they offer. But once you've gone through that process and you've familiarized yourself with your different microphones, then it's a case of selecting particular ones which will offer you certain characteristics or a certain quality, and knowing that that's a characteristic or a quality that you want to have that option of when you come to mixing. You know that you're going to use one of those 2 mics or one of those 3 mics, or you want to use a combination of those microphones. So if you know the reason that you want to record with multiple microphones, then I think that's a great idea. Otherwise, I would say that less is more when it comes to microphones. Don't just record with every microphone that you own simply because you can. Now, whilst we're talking about recording, if you are somebody who wants to record vocals in a home studio environment, then I've got a free vocal recording guide that I think you'll get a great deal of value from. And you can get that entirely free when you head over to mixinglessons.com/free-downloads. This vocal recording guide covers mic choice, mic placement, and steps you can take to make the room that you record in much more suitable for getting great sounding takes. And the third and final area where I think that often less is more when it comes to recording is the number of takes that you record. So once again, with digital recording, we can record pretty much an endless number of takes. And of course, I'm not saying you are only allowed to record 1 take, and if that take doesn't sound right or isn't what you wanted, well, bad luck, you've got to use it. You shouldn't be recording lots of takes. I definitely encourage getting the best takes that you can during the recording process. So if you think you can get a better result by redoing takes, I would much rather you do that than get mediocre takes at the recording stage and then try and fix them during the mixing stage. However, if you find that you're having to do a lot of takes to try and get a take which is good enough, then something is probably wrong. I've been in situations where I've recorded take after take after take because maybe a drummer is certain that they can pull off this fill. They know they did it once before and they want to do it for this recording. Definitely go for it and try and get that take. But if you find that you're having to do take after take after take and you're not really moving closer to where it is that you want to be, then you might have to accept that perhaps you need to have a rethink. Now, of course, that's not the only reason that you might do multiple takes. You might do multiple takes because, once again, this is part of your songwriting process. You record different takes to give yourself different options and decide what's going to work best for the song. So you may know, okay, there's going to be one lead guitar part and I'm going to do 2 different takes. One is going to be, let's say, an 8th note pattern and one is going to be a 16th note pattern. And you want to be able to listen to those 2 different takes back in the context of the song to decide which take it is that you want to use in this mix. Once again, that's absolutely fine. I think that's a great idea. Or let's say you know that there's going to be a guitar solo and you're going to do 3 different takes and you want to try the guitar solo 3 different ways. I think that's a great idea. The only advice I would give you is to decide before you record these takes how many you're going to do and what these different takes are going to be. So if you want to try your guitar takes 3 different ways, I think that's a great idea, but I would have a number in mind for how many different versions you're going to try out and why you're trying those different versions out, rather than performing a guitar solo and then saying, let's try another, let's try another, let's try another, and then ending up with 15 different takes of a guitar solo. Because if you get to the mixing stage and you've recorded lots and lots of different takes, and you've done different takes of different parts, and you don't know yet which parts you want to use in the song, you don't know which of the takes of the different parts you want to use, and you've recorded things with as many different microphones as you can. Whilst you may have gone into the recording process thinking, I want to give myself lots of options for the mixing stage, that can really run away from you, and you can get to the mixing stage and just be overwhelmed by the amount of decisions that you've now got to make. It's often a lot more beneficial to front load a lot of this decision making and be intentional about the number of parts that you record, be intentional about how many different options you give yourself with the microphone choices, and be intentional about how many different takes you'll choose from when it comes to mixing, because then when you go into the mixing stage, a lot of these decisions have already been made and you can concentrate on creating a really good mix rather than still thinking about some of the things that might be better dealt with at the recording stage or before the recording stage, such as arrangement or how the different parts are performed in the final version of the song. Now, less is more is not just a rule that I apply to recording, it's also something that I apply to mixing as well. And I will leave a link to a video on screen where I talk about some areas of mixing where less is almost always more. Don't forget to head over to mixinglessons.com/free-downloads to get that free vocal recording guide. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.